Well, it's hard to believe that this giant monster plant was a small seedling that we planted this spring. This is our Malabar spinach, and you can tell, as I said earlier, it really likes the heat. And the other thing, remember I talked about making sure your structure was really sturdy enough for a plant like this, and you can see here we've got a definite lean to our arbor here, and we're going to have to even put some more supports in here so that it doesn't end up collapsing on us. But we have decided that Malabar spinach is definitely a great hot weather crop for Oklahoma. Now, one of our crops that we had some really great yields on earlier, you no longer see in our garden because we lost our summer squash to our squash bugs and also to the wilt virus. However, it's fall garden season and we can plant more summer squash, and that's what we're going to be doing right here. Now, we basically have got our mounds made, and I'm going to plant some more raven. And remember, that was the zucchini, it's a bush type zucchini, a very small zucchini, and it has a very short growing season. It's only 42 days. So we have plenty of time to go ahead and plant these. Now, you can actually get your fall garden in. This is a great time to start. You want to make a few minor adjustments to what you would do when you would plant in the spring, and one of the main ones is to make sure that you plant so that that soil is not so hot. And what you can do is just dig your holes just a tad deeper than you would in the spring. We want to get those seeds down in there, and I'm planting mine in a hill. You could do this in a furrow if you wanted to. And I've just dug some small holes, and I'm going to put my seeds down inside these holes. Just one, and they're really about 3/4 of an inch deep, when we would usually plant these maybe 1/2 an inch deep. And I'm planting extra seeds. We'll cover them with just a little bit of soil. And then what we're going to do is come in and cover the tops of those with just a little bit of peat moss. You could use moist vermiculite. It's something that's going to hold the moisture in a little bit more than our soil would. That will keep that soil temperature a little bit cooler there, and it will also help keep those seeds from drying out. Now we want to water this in, and we're going to want to check the water very regularly, a few times a day, especially until those little seedlings get up, because they're very, very susceptible to the hot temperatures and lack of water at this stage. Now you can plant a lot of your other crops. You can also plant your bush beans and a lot of your cole crops you can get in. Now if you're going to plant broccoli, you better get it in this week. It's getting a little bit late, but you can get those transplants still in, and you've got plenty of time to get your cauliflower, cabbage, if you want to plant collards and stuff like that. You need to wait just a little bit longer before you start planting your spinach, but if you've got Malabar spinach, you don't need any more. Well, we've got some plants that we need to harvest right now. We've got some great eggplant in our raised beds. Well, we've had an excellent crop of eggplant this year. This particular variety is called Slim Jim, so it's kind of a long, narrow eggplant instead of a larger one. But we have gotten a lot of eggplant off this, and we're continuing to. And I just wanted to go over a little bit of how you harvest eggplant. Now, one of the main things that you want to do is make sure you know what type of eggplant and how big it's supposed to get, so you can kind of judge when it's going to be ripe. The other thing that you can look for is you want to look for a change in the skin color, or not really skin color, but in its shininess. And here we have an eggplant, and this one's probably pretty good here. It's very shiny, and then it turns a little bit duller. Now, you want to harvest them just right before they turn dull, or just right as they turn dull. If they've been on for a few days after they've turned dull, the skin starts to get tough and your eggplant will start to get bitter because it's starting to develop seeds inside. So get them on the young stage just before they reach that peak and the skin turns dull on them. Now, eggplant don't store for a long time. You can store them in your refrigerator for about a week, and the best thing to do is find the warmest spot in your refrigerator. Really, 45 to 50 degrees is a very good temperature, and they'll keep for about a week for you that way. Well, as you're harvesting produce from your garden, we're coming up on fair season, and it could be really fun to take your produce to the fair. And we're going to give you some tips on how to prepare it and enter it in the fair. Well, after you've been picking your peck of peppers, you'll have a lot and they've been wonderful to eat, but you might think of exhibiting some of them in the fair. It can be very rewarding to come home from a fair with a blue ribbon for some of your produce. But how do you go about picking which peppers you're going to exhibit? And we're going to go through some of the criteria that they're evaluated on when they're judged at the fair. Now you start out, and the two of the main criteria that produce is evaluated on are symmetry and uniformity. Now symmetry has to do with each individual pepper, in this case, or produce item, and it basically has to do with equal distribution of the object around a central point. Now this also takes into account, say, the type. See, here we have hot wax peppers, and if you look at them from above, they're equally distributed around here. However, they tend to be flat on either side. Now this would be true to form. Now this pepper is more evenly distributed around the center. However, that isn't true to form. So symmetry takes into account the form of the pepper, and you need to make sure that the type that you have is true to form. Now, for example, if you're exhibiting some of your bell peppers and they should have 3 or 4 lobes, if you have only 2 lobes or 5 lobes, then maybe you should leave that produce out and just eat it at home. Now, uniformity has to do with the number of fruits that you have in the exhibit, and the first thing that you need to do is go down to the county office and get a fair catalog and see how many pieces of fruit or vegetable should be in that exhibit. Usually, in the case of peppers, 6. So you need to have 6 of them. And don't put 5 on the plate. That'll get you out of the contest. And don't put 7. You need to have 6 if it calls for 6. Now, uniformity refers to how much these 6 look alike. So as we look through our peppers, and I've actually picked some out here, we start looking to see which ones look more uniform. And again, we're looking for the ones that are more true to type, kind of long, a little bit of a crook at the end. And you can see here we've got 3 that are smaller, so we take those out. We've also got one that's quite a bit larger than the others, so we don't want it. And we've got several right here that look fairly similar. Now I've got one that's a little bit darker than the others. In fact, it looks like it might have a little bit of sunburn. Now, uniformity refers to size, color, and shape. So as we look here, our sizes are fairly similar, our colors are fairly similar, and our shape, and probably this is smaller, so we take it out. Now, optimally, you would want them all to look exactly the same. However, that doesn't usually happen with produce. Now, we have 6 items here, and we also want to check and make sure that they're free from any insect damage or disease damage. And as I look over them, I notice that here I've got a little bit of insect damage on the top. So I'm going to want to go back through here and maybe find one that looks a little better. And I think this one's going to work for us very well. Now also, in uniformity, usually in your fair catalog, it will tell you how long the stems need to be. And so we need to cut them off. And this is usually about 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the shoulder of the fruit. So I want to cut all of these off evenly. And it will tell you to cut the stem squarely. So you'll want to cut it off square and not at an angle. And see, I messed that one up. So I'll either have to cut this one again, or maybe even I'll probably need to go get some better clippers. Or find me another pepper. So that's one thing you want to do, is to be sure and have a good knife or a good pair of clippers before you start, so you don't mess up your great produce. Now I've got these cut off again squarely. You're not going to want to enter anything that you've pulled off and just plop that on the plate, because that's a very simple thing to take care of, but it will count off at the fair. So we've got them trimmed, and they're nice and uniform. And again, I was saying that's something very easy to take care of that a lot of people overlook when they first enter produce in the fair. Now I have 6, and again, I want to make sure that they're clean, no water damage. If you have something like potatoes or onions that you're exhibiting, then you're going to want to just brush the soil off. You don't want to peel them. You don't want to peel off those outer wrappers. You just want to have them clean of soil and things like that. But the next step is to take them to the fair, so you're going to want to get them there in one piece. Make sure the stems that you've left on don't poke each other. So if you can lay them on a paper plate, put them in a plastic bag, and make sure that you don't harvest these too early so they're not too dried out, they're not over mature. Take them to the fair and see if you'll get a blue ribbon.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.